Working Cows Podcast, episode 227.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. This is Clay Connery, host of the Working Cows Podcast, powered by the Global Ag Network. Very excited to be joined today by Frates Seeligson and Travis Krause. They are with an organization near San Antonio, Texas, called Grazing Lands, and they're doing some really neat things from a production and grazing standpoint, as well as a business management standpoint and managing all of the complexities. And they got a big vision to really build out the infrastructure for a marketing system and a grass finished marketing system. So both big picture thinkers, really looking forward to this conversation, really thinking that it'll be an opportunity for us to all challenge our paradigms with how we're thinking about the business of raising livestock in the world today. So Travis, Frates, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure to be here.
Just kind of came across you guys' business model and kind of did some poking around on your website and really was excited by what I saw. And then in the lead up to this recording, kind of got some more perspective and now even more excited about what you guys are doing there. So could you tell me a little bit about what it is you guys are doing at Grazing Lands, what you're trying to build out there for the future of, I think, as you put it, a regenerative business model, a regenerative ecosystem of businesses?
Yeah, I think I could field that question. I mean, to put it in the most simple words and terms, we exist because we believe the world needs a regenerative ranching model. And to add on to that, the conventional industry has this supply chain and ecosystem of within the economy that functions very well, and unfortunately, the regenerative agriculture doesn't have that. It needs that regenerative economy, and it needs all the infrastructure that exists in that. Everything from the ranching side of the business all the way up to the processing and into the retail side of the supply chain. And it needs the infrastructure to support people that want to do it and to allow it to reach a larger scale. And so Grazing Lands, we're a small spectrum of that in the production side of it down here in South Texas. So
could you tell me what brought you two together? What brought the two of you together and brought this partnership so far, into existence?
Frates, you want to take that one?
Well, yeah, I think Travis and I, a long time ago, it was a farmer's market that brought us together, thanks to my son. But we were brought together by some venture capitalists who started Soilworks. And Travis had been working with two principals. One of them, Lou Mormon, has his own property, and Travis was consulting. I would say is a fair way of saying it. And then as they developed a grass-fed product, Wholesome Meats. And then as the regenerative idea started to grow, they realized they needed some more people around the table. And so then I was brought in to just assist and counsel, and then also to see if we could prove the model, taking a property that my wife and I own and, converting it 100% to regenerative agriculture, and to prove the model. We had a lot of hypotheticals and we had a lot of belief in what we wanted to do, but could we do it at scale? And so I mean, and that's how, Grazing Lands came about, was like, all right, let's not just take an idea, but let's take an idea and ramp it up and see if we could really do it at a level that is, viable economically and viable from an ecological services standpoint, and to prove it. And so that's how we got together. It's been a couple of years, and we're making some progress. But yeah, it's been fun.
Sure. So I recently interviewed a guy who is a small scale vegetable farmer. He's selling lettuce. Steve Strassheim, and was one of my favorite interviews, honestly, in the history of the Working Cows podcast. And it really came down to one statement that he made, and it was a statement that came from the Twitter thread that inspired the episode, that he said that if you want to be in the business of direct marketing, you need to enjoy the selling more than the farming. You need to enjoy the selling more than to the purview of this discussion. You need to enjoy the selling more than the ranching. And I think that you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that what you guys are doing is trying to remove that barrier so that somebody can ranch and direct market without having to enjoy the selling more than the direct marketing. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the reality is I spent the previous 10 years before starting Grazing Lands with our partners with a direct marketing business and a very Soliton style business called Parker Creek Ranch. And we had built our gross revenue up to almost close to $1 million. And, we were fairly good size, but we weren't huge. And I realized the limitations of that model very quickly early on. By probably year 5 or 6, I realized that it's very hard for most people to replicate this type of direct marketing, and that can't just be what regenerative agriculture is going to be. The reality is that most farmers and ranchers aren't good marketers, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So, what we're trying to do is remove that barrier where we're going to provide a wholesale, marketplace for these animals. And so, first step is creating our model and showing people this is what works. And then people can step on, to the model with us and participate in it. And, we're selling our product right now, the whole animals, and we get paid on the rail to, several different buyers right now. And we are building those relationships every day. And so the idea is let's create the foundation, and then we're going to build upon that. And so that's sort of what we're working towards right now. And one of our partners on the sales side, one of our customers is our sister company that's also owned by our venture capital backers called Wholesome Meats. So we're able to be privy to some of the lessons learned on their end too, in regards to carcass quality and how to work with processors, from us to them, and all these things that a lot of I think a lot of people in the beef industry don't get to do, So
yeah, I mean, I love that Steve's comment about enjoy the selling. I think one thing we're trying to do is also, I think you need to, in direct marketing, obviously you need to enjoy the selling, but you also have to understand the selling. And so I think with Grazing Lands, what we aim to do is, and our sister partners, is so our people who partner with Grazing Lands, they also understand the selling and what is it we're actually selling. And because we all work at the end of the day for the consumer, right? And so we need to understand our product and what it is exactly that we're selling, because we're asking for a premium, right? And so we have to sell the confidence in our product. We have to sell the science in our product. We have to sell, the animal husbandry side of it, the ecological services side of it. So what we're trying to do is, help people understand the whole selling process. Does that make sense?
Does to me. So in the ranching for profit world, one of the things that they talk about is the importance of separating the operating business from the land business. And is that kind of what you guys are doing with these, and you can correct me again if I'm wrong, but with these three separate business entities, is that you're separating those things out into, maybe further separating that operating business into the sales side and the production side? Would that be an accurate understanding of what you guys are doing?
Well, to make things clear, I mean, from an operational standpoint, we are strictly a ranching business. We don't own the land. Grazing Lands leases the ranch right now from Frates and his wife. Okay. I mean, that's a totally separate deal, the land ownership, and always will be. I mean, what's unique about us and the way that we approach business is it has to be a self-sustaining, profitable business, or otherwise venture capital would not back us. And all the businesses have to stand on their own 2 feet. Including Wholesome Meats, it's operated by a different CEO and a different set of employees, and all the other businesses that exist within Soilworks Natural Capital and the holding. Everybody's got to stand on their own 2 feet. That's the way real business works.
Yes.
So
then can you walk me?
Don't ever get them confused.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you walk me through the relationship then between Soilworks, Wholesome Meats, and Grazing Lands? Can you tell me what are each one of those entities performing? What are they doing?
Yeah. So Soilworks Natural Capital is the venture capital that backs us. They own a significant percentage of our company, and me, Frates, and the two principals are the partners within that company. Okay. Wholesome Meats is an entirely separate entity. They're just a sister company. I've just been using them as an example. Well, we aren't married to each other, so I'm not dependent on Wholesome Meats. I'm actually entirely independent. Does that mean we don't, work together? No, of course we work together, But it's owned also by Soilworks Natural Capital. And then, it has its own CEO and employees that work within that company as well. So I hope that kind of clarifies it. Yep. And there's sort of, like I said, Soilworks is building this ecosystem of businesses. It has Pasture Map. It has Grassroots Carbon. There's sort of, we're starting to build this ecosystem and always looking at other acquisitions as well. So
would it be fair to say that Wholesome Meats is the meat marketing arm of this business model? Is that fair to say that, or is there more to it than that?
It's not the arm. It's not the arm. Okay. It's one of our customers. Right. It's one of our customers.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so that's kind of where I'm going with that is you're selling your product, whatever that product is, to the highest bidder, right? As far 100%. As critters. 100%. And sometimes Wholesome Meats is that highest bidder. Is that right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think, in the whole portfolio of companies under Soilworks Natural Capital, where there are those synergies, Clay, we want to exploit them. Right. But each, Wholesome Meats doesn't have to buy all their cattle from Grazing Lands. The partners have allowed flexibility within the different companies, but obviously there are synergies, and there's opportunities when you are sister companies. I mean, the cattle industry is hard enough on your own, and so what we've done at Soilworks is kind of provide an ecosystem where we can key off of one another. Not always using the same, not always relying 100%, but it gives us a little more opportunity. And that's what I think the principals are really trying to create is stand on your own, but hey, if we can work together and there's a better margin, let's do it that way.
Right. And so, like you said, Wholesome Meats doesn't have to buy all their meat from Grazing Lands, and Grazing Lands doesn't have to sell all their critters to Wholesome Meats.
That's right.
Right. Kind of wherever the gross margin leads the business is where we're going to go. And, maybe Wholesome Meats has an advantage. We've got data coming in from Pasture Map that gives us another way to market these animals a little bit more profitably, because we can tell the story a little bit more deeply about, how they were grazed and the carbon that was sequestered by these grazing practices and some of that. Is it playing at that level, or is that
Absolutely
happening now?
Is. Yes, it is. Yeah.
And the vision is for that to continue to grow.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And so then can you walk me through the vision of kind of going forward, the growth of these businesses, what they're going to look like, in what we're hoping, what we're shooting for? These are our goals. This is where we're headed. Will Wholesome Meats become a beef brand that other people can market into if they've got the data to back up those things, or just walk me through some of those things?
Well, I think it already is, but just to be clear, I mean, Frates and I are 100% focused on grazing lands,
right.
And, we function as a whole team at Soilworks Natural Capital. But I think as far as the growth goes, the sky's the limit. Are we trying to grow? Absolutely. All the companies are reaching for the same lofty goals, we would like to, look, the big idea is to get as many acres under regenerative as possible, because we think it's the model that the world needs and that the ranching industry needs. Mm-hmm. And specifically focused on grazing, by the way, grazing ruminants, because we believe in the power that they have to really do good for the land and the ecology and carbon sequestration and all those positive attributes that come from grazing ruminants on grasslands and savannas. So
no, good. Really, really appreciate that. So let's then drill down on grazing lands and what you guys are doing there. Walk me through the business model there. Is it decentralized? As far as is all of the grazing happening on one ranch? Are there multiple ranches that are leased by grazing lands? Where are you guys at this point?
Right now it's one ranch that we focused on. It's kind of like taking baby steps before you get up and run. So Pajarito, Frates and Josie's ranch, is located near Pandora, Texas. So it's kind of south of San Antonio, about 45 miles. And so we're in South Texas. It's in a 34-inch rainfall zone on average, even though we had over 60 inches this past year. And it's good grass country. It's traditionally cow-calf country. There's a lot of people that argue that you can't grass finish cattle in South Texas. I've proven them otherwise for 10 years before this, but we're still proving them otherwise. We've marbled out some really nice steaks on grass in South Texas, and without irrigation. So the model kind of as it exists right now is we're working with a handful of cow-calf producers that have the genetics, that have the ability to finish on grass. And so we buy the calves, weaned or at a certain weight from these producers and bring them to Pajarito. And then we grow them there until they're finished, which usually is around 24 months old. And we started harvesting cattle, I think, about 4, 5, 6 months ago, something like that. Yep. We've harvested about 120 out of the 500 or so that are at the ranch right now. They'll continue to be harvested on a monthly basis as the demand grows, with our partners. And that's sort of the basis of the model right now. We also do a little bit of custom grazing there, some heifer development. We're a little diversified just to get more mouths on the ranch, quite frankly, because we were a little understocked this last year. Like I said, taking baby steps, learning the lay of the land. And we'll be right at about 800 animal units this upcoming year. It's already here. So we're actively buying as many cattle as we can get, the right kind of cattle as we can get them. So,
yep.
And Clay, I'll say we're looking to expand. As I said at the outset, is we wanted to see if we could prove the model. There are a lot of inherent I mean, the cattle industry moves at a glacial pace sometimes. And especially in South Texas, there's traditional ranchers and grazers, operators who are doing things the same way because that's the way dad did it or granddad did it. And one thing Travis has been really good at, and we've hosted a lot of field days out at the ranch through grazing lands, because we want to show people what we're doing. I'm convinced no one ever wants to be told anything, but if you show people, then they start to understand. So we've been working on outreach so we can start changing this perception that cattle equal bad, or especially in South Texas, cows equal no hunting, poor deer hunting, which is not true. And so at Pajarito, we're showing you can do these kind of high intensity, short duration grazing, this paddock system, and not adversely affect your hunting, not adversely affect your recreational values, and convince people there's a better way to do it. And so we are looking for land to expand to, preferably around the Pajarito, the first property, just because distance kills any profit. But then establish other nodes throughout the state, throughout the country as we get larger and larger. But you have to change the thought process of a lot, these inherent grazing systems that are generational, and it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah. We're actively having conversations with lessors and REITs and all sorts of options as far as expanding our operations on the land-based side of things.
Sure.
So it's happening as we speak.
Did you say REITs?
Yeah, real estate investment trusts.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you now. It's a new term on me, but
sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. So, among my favorite discussions on the Working Cows podcast is animals that are able to finish on grass, because I think it basically correlates with high maternal performance. Those animals tend to be the same critter, right? So, how are you guys selecting? How are you guys? You're buying in these animals. Are you going directly to the ranch and finding the animals that you think will work? And is it something that you can look at a cow or a calf or the pair and decide this animal is going to perform better than that animal? How are you guys getting animals that you can finish on grass? Or is it totally separate from genetics and epigenetics, and it's really just about the grazing and dialing that in?
No, I would say a large percentage of it is dependent on genetics and epigenetics. For our environment, we are in South Texas. It gets very hot and it gets very humid. And when I say very hot, it can be like 110 degrees with 80% humidity, which is a unique situation in the grazing world for most of the United States. I mean, most of the United States is more moderate than that. And there's a reason why people grass finish cattle in the grass belt, the 38th meridian. And because it's this ideal environment for grass finishing cattle. Now, if we were grass finishing cattle up there, it'd be really easy to go find the Angus genetics that can do it and so on, But because we're in a particularly extreme environment, they have to have heat tolerance. And the more you lean towards heat tolerance, the less capability they have of marbling typically.
Yeah, you lose your grade.
Yeah, you lose your grade. You lose your meat quality. So we tried 6-7 different genetic lines on the ranch this year, weighed them quarterly, and tracked their animal performance all the way to the rail, looking at the grading. And so that data is emerging as we speak. And, we specifically have gone out to seek cow-calf producers that have low-input grass-based genetics. So, for example, something mixed with a Mashona, a Beefmaster crossed with an Angus. I raised Longhorn Red Devons for a decade plus. and those did very well for me on pasture, but I'm not fully convinced they're the perfect animal for it either. And our data is starting to show trends. I don't know. It's hard. I don't want to speak too soon, because I tell you one thing right now where our data is leading us, and it's going to be probably a totally different answer in 6 months.
Sure.
But the answer, the point is, to find varied genetics to see what works. We have technology today. Yeah, I got in the ranching industry. Well, my family's been in it for 4 generations. The tools that I have are amazing compared to just my dad's generation, right? And so, we purposely it was sort of like a dog pound of different genetics out there because we wanted to see what would work. And now, because what we want to do is to be able to enable the cow-calf producer, say, hey, this is the data we've gotten back from your calves. Will you be willing to make this tweak, change this bull? And, let us work with you so you are raising the perfect animal to then come into the grazing land system, and we'll finish it off on grass. So we're not, we want to empower the cow-calf operator to have those choices so they have, a more marketable product on their end.
I mean, Clay, a great example is if Frates and I were going into the feedlot business, there is an immense amount of data out there that's publicized to say, hey, this is what you need to be buying, right? And when you go out there and you research what kind of cattle grass finish in southern environments, there's very little research out there on it. And the research that does exist, at the end of every one of the papers, it says inconclusive and needs more data, So there's no blueprint for this as we speak. So it's a novel thing what we're trying to do. And and look, it can't just be an animal that performs in our environment. It has to be a good eating experience at the end of it. I mean, we can't forget that, because if I wanted to find animals that can perform in our environment in South Texas, they're all over the place. I can go buy Brahma cows. I can buy Corriente or Longhorn crosses, but it has to be a good eating experience at the end of the product, or nobody's going to want to buy it. Right. I mean, we are dealing with buyers who are, very particular. They're not going to just put junk on the plate.
Yeah, I appreciate the approach as far as, as you described it, a dog pound of genetics out there and just kind of seeing what works. How though, or do you feel like you have mechanisms in place to separate the signal from the noise? And what I'm saying is, back to that genetics and epigenetics discussion, how much of that animal's performance on the rail was due to its genetic lines, and how much of it was just a unique individual animal, in some of those. Do you feel like you've got mechanisms in place to separate the signal from the noise, so to speak?
Yeah, I think so. We believe we do. I mean, we collect probably too much data right now. Data can be burdensome unless it's actually useful. So discerning which data is useful and which isn't is still happening for us, but, look, it's all a work in progress. I mean, we are not far enough into it to be able to, say one way or the other, but yes, there are trends emerging that are separating the noise. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they will be trends, but there's always going to be that variation with, we could take, get animals that are genotypically identical, and one is still, there's always, there's as much variation within a breed as there is between two breeds. And so as much as science will distill it out, there's still going to be those outliers that you can't explain.
Yeah.
And you just try to moderate for those.
Sure. Yeah. For example, I mean, a lot of the genetics that we've picked, we've had to cull out the bottom 40% because we just know, looking at our data trends and anecdotal evidence, that they're just not going to do it. and those go off to the feeder.
And how do you? So can you walk me through how you are making those decisions in purchasing certain animals? You mentioned throw out the bottom 40%. Is there a certain extent to where it's a bell curve, and you just know some of these aren't going to work? We're going to send them to the feeder, and we're going to capture some cash flow that way, but it won't be maybe the high margin that these direct marketed, well marbled ribeyes in the city steakhouse will net us. And
that's exactly, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You said it better than I could.
And and Clay, let's not forget, data's great and spreadsheets are great, but you still need to use your eyes and be
Absolutely.
out there. And a lot of it is observation. That's, we can, like Travis said, you can get an overload of data and you find yourself looking at your computer instead of looking at your cattle. And
analysis paralysis.
And cattle will tell you. I mean, you can look at this. I mean, they're all the same. They should all be the same, but the cattle will tell you. And so, that's one thing you got to always remember is you still got to be out there and look at your cattle and let them show you what's happening.
That is a great segue. How are you guys determining when? Because let me back up a second and lay out how I'm understanding this business model. You're purchasing calves born at different times of the year from different ranches, on some level, hoping that a good majority of them are going to be able to finish on grass and grade well. So how are you deciding when that animal is ready to ship? Is that just something that Travis, you have experience seeing? We've got 3 folds above the tail head or whatever that Greg Judy talks about, and this animal's ready to go. Are you taking trailer loads at a time? Are you taking one at a time? What's that kind of practically look like?
Well, so I mean, from a data side, we're tracking what their ADG is, and we're seeing, when they get above that 2 pounds a day, that means they're, starting to do some marbling, internal marbling. And then, of course, age is a factor as well. I roughly know what age most of the breeds will finish at, even though some are later maturing, like our Beefmaster Krauses or our Beefmasters. So we're yet to see what age they're going to finish at yet. But, what we'll do is the 2 employees that we have at the ranch, Michael Tidwell and Charlie Canyo, who are kind of the backbone of what we do.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're the guys that are out there day to day hustling it. And while Frates and I sit in the office most of the time, and so, we'll round up the cattle. And of course, everything's EID'd, and also has a visual ID, and we sort, and so we have kind of our main mob of sockers, and then we sort off the finishing end, and we treat them a little different on the pasture than we do the main mob. We let them be a lot more selective. We slow them down on the rotation. It's not the daily or twice a day rotation. So, essentially we're letting them fatten up, and so we know ahead of time, we'll pull out 60 or 90 out of the herd. They're in the finishing herd. The order comes in, we know the shipping date way ahead of time. We put them in the pens the night before, and we select out the ones visually, that have the finish. And we look for all the normal attributes that you would for a grass finish, the tail fat, the plump brisket, and all those things. So that's kind of how it's pretty simple, really. I mean,
talk to me about the grazing side of the finishing. You mentioned separating them out, slowing down the rotation, letting them be more selective. Are they in a totally different area of the ranch? Are they getting a couple of days ahead of the main mob and having time to kind of select before the next mob comes in behind them? How is that working practically?
We're very adaptive. I don't really have a prescription for how we graze. I don't like to follow prescriptions. I never have, with my grazing patterns that I've done. Typically the main mob is pushed a little harder so that we can achieve our ecosystem services side of it for the carbon sequestration, putting down that carbon layer. Now, if you want animals to finish, though, you can't push them that hard. and you have to allow them to be more selective and taking kind of the ice cream of the pasture, And so, fortunately, we're working on a pretty good sized ranch, and we had a really great blessed year of rainfall. So we had more forage than we knew what to do with. So they weren't necessarily in front of or behind. What we are working towards right now, we just had one of our planning meetings this last week, is the finishing herd will go the paddock before the big herd. So that way it reduces our labor to where the fence is already set up, the finishing herd's in there, the big herd's behind them. They move forward a step, the fence is already set up for the big herd to move in behind them and clean up, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yep.
The way I described it?
What would you say are some of your indispensable tools in this business model? It sounds like a scale. It sounds like RFID. And then how often are you running them through there to keep track? You said once we see them start gaining 2 pounds a day, we know that they're starting to marble. How often are they being run through? What are some of the tools that you're using to
So we have a scale, that's a tool that we use. It's just under the squeeze chute, and so that's a valuable tool. We're weighing them every quarter. And it sounds a little burdensome, but it's really not. I mean, the cattle are at the pens every 45 days or so. So it's, once the cattle get used to being worked, it's really easy. They flow through the chutes. They sort easily. I mean, all those things. It sounds daunting sorting, 30 out of 500 or something, but it goes pretty fast. We can do it in an hour with 3 people on site in the pens, Some other tools that I would say are indispensable is the first thing we did when we got to the ranch is we installed some serious amount of water lines. The ranch already had really great infrastructure. Honestly, it was already broken into 9 pastures, hard fence pastures. Frates had been really focused on the ecology of the ranch. So we came into a ranch that wasn't highly degraded or something like that. The ecology was primed and honestly needed grazing because a lot of it was so, old. A lot of the grass was so old at that time. There were cattle on it from the previous tenant, but it was just set stocking. The water infrastructure on the ranch was also pretty superb compared to most situations. But we installed about 30,000 feet of pipe to service the pastures better, where we could do the daily rotation. So that was critical. And being able to have our portable water trough system. But I would say the one other tool that is absolutely critical to the grazing side is so all of our infrastructure is modular. Because something we believe is for ranchers to really adopt these systems, we can't be spending money on tons of hard fences. And a lot of these ranchers in South Texas in particular don't like looking at fences. They're wildlife focused. And I would say that's the case for a lot of these ranches being purchased, where the landowner is more concerned about the recreational use of the ranch versus the agricultural use. So we believe that we need to be able to model out and design a system that's entirely modular. And when you're starting to graze on really big ranches, that goes a little bit beyond your normal hand reels because that can become extremely labor intensive and burdensome. So we use a product made by Range Ward called a razor grazer, and we have several of the power arms, and those are just absolutely incredible product. It's what makes it makes what we do possible, honestly, and where our guys aren't getting burned out. Yep.
Is the razor grazer the one that holds 9 miles of the 9 wire, or not 9 miles, 2 miles of the 9 wire Power Flex braid? Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of wire on one reel.
Yeah, because our guys are building several miles of fence every day.
Right.
Every single day.
Yeah. And that's the razor grazer parked on one end and a side by side with a handle in your hand, driving to the other end and hooking it on, and then stepping posts on the way back.
That's right.
Yeah. That's how that looks.
And then I would say one other tool that's been that is important, that's accessible to everyone, is Pasture Map. I mean, I'm not saying that just because our VC owns them, but I mean, it is those kind of tools are indispensable, where Charlie can be on one side of the ranch and Michael on the other moving cattle, and they can be coordinating what they're doing, and they know exactly where, Michael's in there planning the grazing path and everything like that. I mean, it's just a super valuable tool in regards to our data, that we're collecting, and knowing how many cattle can we add on this month. I can go in there in real time and look at it and see, okay, we're behind on our ADAs, but let's add 200 head. Let's pull off 100 head, so.
And even more so than just using Pasture Map for grazing, Travis referenced, especially here in South Texas, hunting is king. But, the ranch is leased out fully for hunters, right? But instead of it becoming a problem with mob grazing, right, we hooked them up with Pasture Map. So when they drive in from Houston, they already know where the cattle are going to be. And so they can make their plans accordingly. And they know the next weekend, the cattle aren't going to be down there. And so we've actually incorporated Pasture Map to just make the other tenants, the other people on the ranch, more efficient. And it's alleviated a lot of headaches.
Keeps everyone happy.
Yeah. And I'm going to weigh in on a tool that's not a physical tool that's critically important. It's having coworkers who believe in the system. When we at the outset, my old foreman at the ranch didn't believe in electric fencing, didn't believe in regenerative grazing, and it became an issue. And to have our team now that understands, and they understand, anyone can understand, like, you start the fence here and it ends there, but to understand the process and to believe in it is critically important. And that's one of the things that is going to take time as this regenerative agriculture approach grows, is especially in Texas, where hot wire isn't the most common choice out there. And to teach people that cattle can be trained, and that this management isn't onerous. It's really pretty easy. And tools like the razor grazer help carry that burden. But Michael and Charlie believe in it, and that allows Travis and myself time to go, unfortunately, sit in the office.
We work on the bigger picture things, though.
Yeah, but that's true. That belief in the system, it's not a physical tool, but it's vital to the success of the operation.
Yeah, sure. I'm so glad Frates brought that up, honestly, Clay, because too often in this industry, all we talk about are the cows and the land. And honestly, our most valuable tool at grazing lands is the people. I mean, and it's something we work really hard to do. And it's something that, unfortunately, in our industry is on the back burner for most operations. And, we try to pay them well, and offer them benefits and things that you don't normally see in this industry, and treat them right, and not micromanage them, and work with these to-do list, task list type, leadership strategies, so it's something that we are adamant about.
Logan Pribino, I think, intentionally forwards that stuff on his Twitter profile. He's always posting pictures of their Christmas party, or they're gathering around the breakfast table for a discussion, and it goes back to that, probably by this time, cliche in business management, that culture eats strategy for breakfast every day. It is culture is way more important. So we've got lots of great pieces that I still want to go on to, but talk to me about casting that vision, getting that buy-in, finding the people that will buy in. You mentioned your former former ranch foreman, would he be former if he had bought into the vision? I mean, that kind of thing. How do you find the right people and get the right people in the right seats on the bus, to borrow Francis? I can't remember his name now. Collins, right? Yeah. Last name's Collins. But anyways, how do you do that? What are some of the things that you guys have found useful in doing that?
Well, I think younger people.
Yeah, well,
younger generation. I'm saying that somewhat in jest, but people who haven't been, indoctrinated by this idea that there's only one way of doing things, and like I said earlier, change is it's generational sometimes, and my dad's generation will be laughing at me for trying to do this. I'm the oldest, probably the oldest person on this podcast right now. And, I came to my partnership with Travis with preconceived ideas, and in full disclosure, I was a little dubious whether you could take South Texas Beefmaster cattle and have them, train them to an electric fence. These cattle, the only thing they've seen in their life are helicopters. But it's true. It works. And so, it's the mindset, finding people that are willing to look at the box in a different way.
I know, Travis, you want to jump in here, but I got to say this before I miss it again, because it's come to mind a couple of times. See, Frates, if you told your dad what you were selling, direct marketed steak for, or what the average per pound price of that direct marketed animal was, but now if you told him that and then told him what your margin is on it, he probably would still be shocked, even though the dollar amount is probably astronomical compared to what your dad and your granddad sold calves for. Mm-hmm. But the margin would still blow him away. He's like, you're selling it for that much and you're still only making this much. That's why I think what you guys are doing is so necessary, because even with astronomical prices and being able to sell them at these high prices, the margin is still smaller than what they could ever imagine. They were making a better margin probably on the animals they were selling for a fraction of the price.
Yeah, back in 1980.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why it's necessary. Travis, did you have something to add to that discussion about culture and finding the right people?
Just on finding the right people, I think, I've spent the better part of my ranching career creating a really solid network of people that I can reach at just the phone call, and, I think also that's vitally important and should never be understated, but also that the preconceived notion that somebody needs to have livestock background to be working in this business is bogus. I mean, Michael, our foreman, at Pajarito, that works for Grazing Lands, had never touched a cow before he worked out there. I mean, he had briefly worked for me at Parker Creek Ranch years ago, and then went on to do other things. And now he's in charge of hundreds of, head of cattle, and rotating them every day and running them through the pens when they need to be run through. And, our other employee, Charlie, was relatively easy to get on board because he was anxious to learn, That was his attribute, was he just was anxious to learn new things and do new things. And so, I hire people on character. I could care less what their experience is for the most part. So, and then, we have an intern working for us right now who's the same way, Kevin. His character, is bar none. It's incredible, and he's super valuable even as an intern.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that, Travis. It's that, the background, you don't have to have had grown up on a working cattle ranch to understand these systems. A lot of what we're doing now is monitoring. You're looking at grass, not cattle. You're monitoring your forage. And so But when you think of the generation of kids coming out of school, there's a lot of kids who are coming out of schools with an environmental degree, with and they have a passion for the environment. They don't have a passion for cows, but they want to see and affect change in the right way. And so we can provide them an avenue where they can do what their passion is, and they might never have imagined they were going to use a cow to accomplish it, but the end result is what they believe in.
That's great. I really appreciate that. Could you tell me a little bit about, you mentioned that having great help frees you guys up to be able, or sorry, help is a bad word, but great people is what frees you guys up to spend more time, regrettably, in the office. Could you walk me through your day-to-day? What are you guys doing on a day-to-day basis? What are you finding that keeps you guys busy and productive on a day-to-day basis outside of the ranching for profit term would be Whitby, working in the business? What are you guys finding on a day-to-day basis? What are you doing? Are you sourcing cattle? Are you building relationships with places to direct market cattle? What's your day-to-day look like?
All the above. Like right now, I mean, so I'm fortunate enough to be able to still live on my family's ranch. It's been in my family since 1846. It's 2 hours from Pajarito. And so I go check in on the guys about once a week, typically. When I'm called upon, they call me to get my help to go work cattle in the pens or go help them look at their grazing chart and work through some troubleshooting type stuff. Beyond that, my day-to-day is coming to my home office here, which is actually in the 1891 ranch house away from the house that my wife and I live in, because I have 3 young boys, so it'd be virtually impossible to work inside the house. And often get interrupted on calls like this by my children running over here, banging on my door. But yeah, I mean, marketing, sourcing cattle, working on economic spreadsheets and projections, budgets. Gosh, I mean, the list goes on. Processing, getting processing scheduled, going and visiting processors just to make sure that they're going to meet our customers' expectations. So many things like that. Working on trying to help the guys source a new ranch truck, that unfortunately can't be delivered for 6 months. All those crazy things. So.
Frates, what about you?
And then Frates, I'll let you.
What do they say about startups and joining a startup? Don't quit your day job. So actually, Clay, I still have a full-time job working for an environmental nonprofit here in San Antonio. So I spend 4 days a week working with the San Antonio River Foundation as executive director. And then 1 day a week, I'm out. I try and be out at the ranch, check in on the guys. Poor Travis, but he does the lion's share of the work. And maybe in a few years when we're all flying private jets, I'll quit my lucrative nonprofit job. But so I help. I help with a lot of it. Through my connections in the cattle industry, like trying to get people to meetings with people looking for lease land. Helping connect cow-calf producers with what we're doing. Just a lot of outreach, just trying, and then, keep another pair of eyes on the ranch. That's my home away from home. And there's always issues, as every landowner knows. Wells go down, generators go down.
Frates puts out
things happen. Yeah. Put out fires, but, my days are busy, but I think it's ironic that I work. So my job is with the San Antonio River Foundation, and our mission is to steward the the San Antonio River through ecology, education, recreation. And I find a lot of in my daily routine of whether it's bringing school kids out to the riparian zone and teaching about native ecology, it's so much about what Grazing Lands is doing too, and about this whole regenerative agriculture. And I find opportunities here. We have an environmental education center that we built it's the second poorest district in San Antonio. And I'll have these kids there who they don't know where clean water comes from. And so it's an opportunity for me to have this conversation that, our water is filtered by healthy grasslands. And if we want to have clean, safe, potable water, we need to have a conversation with rural Texans. Okay. And so we're bridging this disconnect between rural and urban. Right. And that's so much of that narrative is also what we're trying to do with Grazing and convince people that, there's a better way and that our choices actually matter and they have ramifications, and you can make the right choice or you can make the wrong choice. And so it's, although they're different, there's a lot of overlap between the two. And, a lot of my work is being out talking about the foundation and our mission and our efforts, but also a lot of these people that I might be asking for money, guess what? They also might have some ranch land in South Texas. And
that needs
probably
better
have
management.
That needs better management. And so it's, it's amazing how many times my two jobs kind of align and line up with one another.
I think something that Frates brought up that is really interesting is that, in regards to the connection with the land and the urban environments, is that when it comes to regenerative agriculture, people like us that are actively involved in it, we think it's a big deal. We think it's everywhere and it's so massive, and to us individually it is. And in the grand scheme of things, though, it is still a microscopic portion of what's going on in agriculture. And, there are so many landowners in South Texas that if you said regenerative agriculture to them, I would say 99% of them have never heard it before. They don't even know what it is. It's becoming a little more of a known word, but they don't know what it means, So there's still this, massive opportunity to get this out there and to create some scale with it. Because it's still just such a small spectrum. I mean, we are literally the folks that are practicing regenerative grazing or regenerative agriculture of any kind. Even if you've been doing it for 30 years, you are still at the very tip of the spear. I mean, it has so much further to go.
Yeah, that's an amazing thought. Think about what could be accomplished ecologically speaking if it wasn't just the tip of the spear, if more of the spear, so to speak, was grazing this way, and how much different landscapes and cycles and droughts and those things would be. That's a fascinating thought.
Yeah.
Can you guys tell me a little bit? We're kind of moving towards wrapping up. Could you, not because we're out of things to talk about, obviously, but could you tell me a little bit about data that you have found to be useful in marketing, specifically direct marketing? What data is actually worth capturing to pass on to wholesome meats and to steakhouses and those things? What is actually making a difference in the bottom line as far as data that you should be capturing or think about capturing?
Well, I think on the grazing spectrum, on our production side of things, average daily gain cannot be, you have to be watching what your average daily gain is, because the animal unit is costing you X amount of dollars per day. Hopefully it's in the cents, right? And I know from an operational standpoint how many head of cattle we have to sell just to make Pajarito break even as a division, right? And I know essentially what my ADG needs to be to achieve that. Because if we're going beyond the 24-month period on finishing cattle, you start eating into your profits considerably. Okay, because you're in a fight against time. Animals have an expiration date on them in the beef business. Okay, so ADG is critically important, and it's something that we've been watching very closely and understanding its effect on our bottom line.
So the expiration date, is that just because of processing and what they will and won't cut certain aged animals into?
Or who will even buy it?
Right.
Yeah.
Certain buyers will not buy over 30 months.
Right. Well, I don't know if that's the same everywhere, but I've heard some people say that after 30 months you will never get a T-bone, right? It's sirloins and strip steaks. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, you can't get a T-bone because you're not allowed to make that cut
after 30 months
because the government says
right. That's
so,
what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's there's a regulation in place.
Yeah, there's regulation there.
There's an opportunity for black market 30-month-old T-bones.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
There's a lot of KPIs that we watch. That's one that really stands out to me because it unfortunately is something that never gets talked about in the grass-fed business. Focuses on like, oh, these genetics do so well and finish so great here, and it's like, okay, but what was your ADG? Was there opportunity cost that you lost by being in the grass-fed business? And maybe you shouldn't be in the grass-fed business. Maybe you should be a cow-calf producer, or maybe you should be a stocker backgrounder, or just a stocker. You should be doing sell buy or something. I mean, because the reality is that if we're going to run Pajarito, it needs to be run in a way that's optimal in the economics. So these grass-fed animals need to be going above your normal margins. And ADG is a pretty important part of that.
You said that after a certain age, I think after 24 months, they start to eat into your profits, and that's because they're slow to finish, and they're eating grass that another animal that might be faster to finish could be eating. That's how that's working?
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah. So, but you never ever want to focus on one data point. I mean, that's a huge mistake. But that's one that has really stood out to us in particular in our environment, because look, our environment is not known for putting on ADG, during most of the year. These southern hot environments aren't known for putting on weight during the summers, but we had some particular genetics that did 2.7 pounds per day on native forage during the summer, while everything else was doing 1.4. Well, hey, that's money. That's a lot of money right there per day. That's a huge difference to the bottom line. And if that animal's going to finish it, way ahead of this other one, bingo,
Did they finish well? Did they marble well and everything?
They're getting there.
Those ones
they are
that
a little
were 2.7.
slower maturing. So they're slower maturing. There's some Bosindicus in this particular breed, and they're a little slower maturing than we expected them to be. Sure. So like I said, you can't focus on one data point because it's a double-edged sword if you do.
Right. Frates, do you have anything to add to that discussion about useful data?
Yeah. Well, I think from the data, the average daily gain is critically important. Yeah. I think one thing, Clay, I'd recommend is one of the things is, we started as a stocker operation, grass-fed, right? And then we weren't necessarily maximizing the resource, i.e. the land.
Yeah.
And so Travis and I came into this is what we're going to do. And then we realized, what? We need to maybe change some of the animals we're using. Right? Maybe we need some cows to literally be lawnmowers out here, because the stockers weren't performing on the lignified grass, right? And we couldn't get them to eat the old, kind of the washy grass. So we had to we're like, okay, well, maybe we need different species, different animals out here to maximize the resource. I mean, we know we're understocked, and you can look at that, and you can go and do your forage clippings and all, but we're like, wait a minute, we might need a different type of animal to maximize this resource. Yeah. And so we did some custom grazing. And so I think, on the stocker side, the ADG, the grass finish side, but then we also having to learn how to maximize your forage and your resource, right? And not every property is designed to be a perfect grass finished stocker operator, right? But you can still, look at it and find ways to increase your bottom line, increase your margin by maximizing that resource, and just be clever about what you're looking for, and don't get pigeonholed into one thing. And I think that's one thing I would stress to people. It's like, there's different tools. And it's not going to be any one tool. It's going to be a combination of tools, and be willing to adapt and use all the tools available.
Yeah, sure. Because and the reason we say that is a critically important part of our revenue and our business is selling carbon credits. So it's we're in the beef business, but we're not just in the beef business. We're also in the carbon credit business. So
I want to take one more granular detail look, and then I'd like to zoom out to the big picture as we wrap up here. What does communication look like for you guys? Is a lot of that communication on a day-to-day basis happening through Pasture Map? Is there people that are coming? Is there mechanisms in place to get everybody in one room? You and the two guys that are on the ranch on a day-to-day basis, get the two of you and them in a room and talk about what needs to happen and where we're going, strategy and some of those things. What's communication look like for you guys?
Yeah. Well, we have our WATB meetings about once a week, typically Fridays. That's pretty much everybody on the team getting together and just talking about strategy as far as the business side goes, the cattle, whatever needs to be put on the table. Cussing and discussing type stuff as well. And we try to all talk to each other in a way where everybody puts on their pants the same way. So nobody's above someone else. Say what you need to say at the meeting. It's important. And, as far as a day-to-day, though, we try to be pretty hands-off and let the guys who are on the ground doing it have their own decision-making going on. I mean, as we grow this business and we scale up to much larger, I can't be holding people's hands, neither can Frates. And people have to be empowered and know how to make their own decisions. So that's what we strive towards. But that being said, they can check in with me at any time they want, if they need help, and Frates as well, and that does happen,
it does
pretty often. But that's pretty much kind of how it goes on a day to day. And then of course we hold our Q1, Q4 board meetings a year with our venture capital. Where we go over budgets and big spending and strategy and things like that as well.
Yeah, and we have those Thursday update meetings with the partners. 30 minutes, no longer. I mean, literally, it hits 30 minutes. It's like, we're done.
They're off. And that's usually strategy stuff that Frates and I jump on the meeting with, and we talk about strategy. So big picture stuff, usually.
Sure. Yeah, if you don't have anything out of that, Frates, that's a great segue, but you can go ahead if you do have something to add to the communication piece. Okay, so let's zoom out, 30,000-foot view. If somebody wants to get involved here, outside of Texas, would they get involved with a management style that would allow them to sell to Wholesome Meats? Is Wholesome Meats very local? What is the going forward, growing this business? You talked about infrastructure for a regenerative, basically a regenerative economy, a regenerative agriculture economy. When we started, what are the next 5, 10, 20 years look like if things go the way you guys are hoping, thinking?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's something that I spend a large portion of my time doing right now, is thinking about that and beating it around the bush all day long. The reality is, Clay, even though we're a land-based, cow-based business where we have ownership right now, that is not a strategy to growing regenerative grazing as big as we can get it. You know what I mean? Because Frates and we can't manage all the land and all the cattle, no matter how many people are working for us, right? So we'll build the foundation, a model that we think is, valuable to other producers, and then build the platform to make that much greater and scale it up. I don't want to go into too many details and share all my secrets in regards to how we intend to do that. But that's the idea. I mean, we are fully aware that we can't do it all, and we don't want to do it all, but we do want to build that regenerative economy and that infrastructure to support it. And so check back with us in a couple of years and we can talk all about it, because we'll be there, hopefully.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm going to agree with that. We want to build the model and see it grow, and it's not going to grow all by our hand, but we believe that this model is, it's really one of those few win-win-win. It's a win for the ecology, it's a win for the landowner, and it's a win in that the consumer's getting, a really wonderful product. And we have a platform and an idea that we're going to build out. There's going to be others, and but at the end of the day, the more people who are understanding and embracing regenerative agriculture, the better for all of us.
Very good. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap it up. Where should we send people if they want to hear more about what you're doing or kind of keep up with what's going on?
www.sa Riverfront. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not Go ahead, Travis.
I think Grazing Lands, that's with an S on the end, .com is our website. That's probably the best place to connect with us. And, feel free to shoot me an email or Frates. Mine's Travis at grazinglands.com, and Frates is Frates at grazinglands.com. Frates.
Thank you.
I really appreciate Frates. The first words out of his mouth were, "Hey, I'm Frates," because I've been pronouncing that Frates in my head all week. So
that's okay. After 52 years, you learn it's best just to say your name at the outset.
Yep. Well, it annoys me because I've got the last name Connery, which I think has to be one of the more simple names in the world. It's not Johnson or anything, but it's not hard, and it gets pronounced wrong all the time. So I really try to pay attention to people's names and get pronunciations right if I can. So, but anyways, thank you guys so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, Clay.
Very good stuff. Mind bending. Took me a long time to catch up in that conversation, but I really appreciate their patience with me and the opportunity to share what they've got going on and their big picture view. Travis and Kevin Silverman from Soil Works Natural Capital, Travis, of course, from Grazing Lands, will be joining me for the RFP online webinar talking about carbon credits. So if you are interested in the subject of carbon credits and you are a Ranching for Profit alumni, you can go out and sign up for RFP online and join us for that discussion. That'll be Tuesday, February 15th, 1 p.m. Mountain Time. That's about a week from the release of this episode, one week and 1 day from when this episode came out. So if you're listening to it in time, Tuesday, February 15th, 2022, you can join us at 1 p.m. for a discussion about carbon credits with Travis Krause of Grazing Lands and Kevin Silverman of Soil Works Natural Capital. Coming up next week on the Working Cows podcast, I have finally gotten back around to another one of my Stoneville Stories interviews, this time with Floyd and Donna Kamak. And you might notice some show notes pages that are a little wonky over the next few weeks because I'm dropping this one into the schedule because their anniversary is the day after it will release. So this episode, Lord willing, will release February 14th, and their 70th anniversary. They've been married 70 years on February 15th. And so we're going to talk to Floyd and Donna both about some of the history that they have witnessed here on the prairies of western South Dakota, near Faith, South Dakota. And actually, Floyd's family has been in this area since before Faith, South Dakota existed. Yes, even before South Dakota was a state. There was some discussion on that episode about whether or not they showed up here in 1878 or 1887, but South Dakota became a state in 1889. So either way, they were here before South Dakota was even a state. So pretty neat history. Was honored to get to sit down with them and capture some of their history. So look forward to that. All of those Stoneville Stories episodes can be found at workingcows.net/Stoneville. STONEVILLE, workingcows.net/Stoneville. You can find all of those episodes, the 3 that I've done so far, and this one will also get added there. So looking forward to that. Really excited to share that interview with you. We'll see you again real soon with another episode of the Working Cows podcast.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.